What's going on, fitness friends? So we're back with another little clip about weightlifting. There's a whole bunch of stuff on the board behind me, but so what we're going to do is we're going to define weightlifting a little bit in the context of what's required, or like in exercise science terms, if you will. And then from there, we're going to talk about, based off of what weightlifting is, who should be doing weightlifting, what kind of people should be doing weightlifting. So the first thing is, what is weightlifting? Weightlifting is the snatch and the clean and jerk. We're talking weightlifting specific to Olympic style weightlifting. People call it Oli lifting, people call it Olympic style weightlifting, weightlifting. In general, the sport is weightlifting. So I know some of us are like bench press, squat, dumbbells, all that kind of stuff. Yes, that is lifting weights, but that is not the sport of weightlifting, and that's what we're referencing specifically. Snatch and clean and jerk. The snatch is one movement from the ground to overhead, and the clean and jerk is two movements, the clean and then the jerk overhead, okay? So that's gonna be the snatch and the clean and jerk. That's gonna be weightlifting. It is fast, dynamic, and then also, and this is important to note, it is complex, okay? It is complex. And then when we're looking at a spectrum, and that's what this whole thing is, a spectrum of muscular contractions. We have weightlifting, which is actually here in red as strength speed. So we have motor control, but movement mechanics. Make sure you're moving well, okay? Muscle endurance. So now that you're moving well, do you have some endurance? Can you do 10 air squats in a row without your position and technique breaking down? Great, right? So this is all about being fit enough to train. And then we have absolute strength. It's like, how heavy is your back squat? How much can you pull for the deadlift? That kind of stuff's absolute strength, really digging deep into your body. And then we have strength speed. So now we're taking the absolute strength that we've built and we're expressing it through snatch, clean and jerk, heavy sled sprints, stuff like that, okay? And it kind of continues to go down through this direction. And what I want you to notice is, after strength speed, we have speed strength, speed and endurance. And essentially these efforts from here get faster and more explosive. And then over here, this just becomes cyclical and repeating long endurance. So where is weightlifting on this continuum? And it's strength speed, okay? That's where it is, strength speed. And why is this important? Because this goes right into who should be doing weightlifting. It's people who can express the intent. So the intent of weightlifting is that it's powerful, aggressive, and complex, okay? So who can do that? It's people that have good motor control, good muscle endurance, and really good absolute strength, okay? People who are back squatting a barbell and having a hard time coming up out of the hole, those people do not have good prerequisite of absolute strength in order to be training strength speed, or for our purposes today, weightlifting, okay? There's more bang for their buck as a general fitness connoisseur to work on building strength first. Then essentially this is a complex or a peripheral version of strength, right? So if we don't have good absolute strength, then other versions of strength, of other special strengths, if you will not be, you'll not be able to express them properly, okay? So we want a good foundation before we're expressing more complicated, special versions of general fitness or general capacity, okay? That is who should be doing weightlifting, who should be expressing the snatch and clean and jerk. Again, the snatch and clean and jerk are fast, dynamic, and complex. We want people who have good prerequisite of motor control, muscle endurance, and most importantly, absolute strength in order to train these movements well. Now we'll find that if people are stalling or getting frustrated here or getting hurt here, oftentimes this foundation is not where it needs to be, okay? Now, that's foundation. Who should be doing weightlifting? It's people who have a good foundation to express the movements of snatch and clean and jerk, okay? Now, the other kind of person or people that should be, the who's that should be doing weightlifting are the people who have good structure and build. Now, I wrote a list of some. This is not exhaustive, but this is a good list to get us thinking about the demands of the snatch and the clean and jerk and what it requires for us to express them fully or well, and then for us to take some inventory of ourselves and go, wait a second, is that me? Okay? Good dorsal flexion, right? Does the foot move through a big range of motion well? If you don't have good dorsal flexion, that's going to change the bottom position of your squat. Your hips are going to go back more, your torso is going to be more canted forward, and you're going to be more stress on the back as a lever arm in the sport of weightlifting if you don't have good dorsal flexion. That's going to change absolutely everything. A good deep hip socket, right? A deeper hip socket is actually going to keep the neck of the femur safer, right? People that have shallower hip sockets, the bone is not going to be as deep. The lever arm on this neck of the femur is going to be, there's going to be more stress on that lever arm, and then over time, people that have shallower hip sockets will have achy hips, frustrated kind of stuff going on in their hips. So that's something important to consider. Flexibility is also a given. We kind of talked about that with dorsal flexion, but flexibility in the hips, flexibility in the shoulders, flexibility throughout the whole system. RCGH, so that's rotator cuff and glenohumeral strength. The rotator cuff are the muscles that support movement of the scapula. The glenohumeral is the supportive structure that helps maintain and keep the shoulder, the head of the humerus stable in the socket. Okay, so the glenohumeral joint is a shallow joint relative to the hip. Okay, and people with a really shallow glenohumeral joint, the shoulder will more easily dislocate. So quickly throwing a barbell overhead could put the shoulder at more risk, okay? So having good strength throughout the supportive structure is going to be really important, but on top of that, scapular movement. So if we're putting our arm overhead, the scapula is going to rotate, slide over across the thoracic rib cage, and then tip as well. Now, what I like to do with some of my clients that I work with is just have them do a basic 90-90 test, bent over here and then here, and I'm feeling the scap move across the thoracic rib cage. If the scap doesn't move well, then we know with movements where we're throwing our arms over our head with dumbbell snatch, barbell snatch, that kind of stuff, if the scapula doesn't move well, then we're going to require the shoulder to compensate for that lack of range of motion. For the lack of range of motion, the shoulder will have to put itself in a funky position in order to get the arm overhead. Okay, a robust build. Okay, we see some of the best weightlifters in the world with thicker frames. It's the truth. Thicker frames equal shorter levers. Shorter levers equal less range of motion for the bar path to travel. Also less torque at end ranges, so knees, hips, elbows, that kind of stuff. Okay? Good unilateral balance, I threw that in there because that's really important for any sport no matter what, but this is just a basic list of kind of prerequisites that are ideal in order for people who want to express themselves fully in the sport of weightlifting. Okay? Weightlifting, what is it? It's an explosive, fast, dynamic, complex sport. Snatch and clean jerks are the lifts. Where does it lie? On a continuum of strength, right in the middle. And what's required to express it is a great foundation of everything to the left. Okay? Also, in addition to that, we need a great foundation of build and structure in order to even begin to practice the movements with any sort of relative intention to how the movements are supposed to be done. Yeah, so what am I saying? Dean, should we take the 60-year-old client, 50-year-old client that's doing touch and go snatches, should we take that away from them? If they don't live up to some of these prerequisites, then sure, absolutely. touch and go movements in weightlifting, that's different. That's a different sport altogether. That's mixed modal, that's CrossFit, that's functional fitness, like that's all of that kind of stuff, right? Touch and go weightlifting movements, you can get that same type of stimulus, aerobic conditioning and stimulus, by doing something else that's much safer, as long as these prerequisites are or not set, right? So if they are set, and these people have really good foundation, then great. Then we can go ahead and express some weightlifting stuff. We might even do some touch and go stuff. But for people that don't have this foundation, yeah, absolutely. We're giving them a piece of dynamite that's lit, and they're holding it in their hand. Boom, 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 right? Options for people who want to get some good shoulder stability, some landmine presses, incline presses with the bench, and then slowly start bringing their arms further and further overhead. Slow static positions first, strict presses with the dumbbells, so on and so forth. And then over time, start getting into some more dynamic stuff with a dumbbell snatches, blah, 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 blah. And then from there, we can get into something that's extraordinarily complex, which is with the barbell snatch and clean and jerk. So that's a little basic of what snatch and clean and jerk actually look like from a biomechanical standpoint. On top of that, who should be doing these kinds of movements and lifts, and then a little bit at the very end is how we can kind of progress and on-ramp people to get them in a physical position where they're ready to start expressing some of these more complicated things. Cool? Guys, hope you guys enjoyed it. Any questions, don't be afraid to send us a message on Facebook, Instagram, all that kind of stuff. You can send me a text message if you like. My number is 518-894-5582. I don't care. Bring it. I want to hear from you guys on all the different things that are going through your mind. As always, remember, learn, grow, reach. Boom!